last stuff, same with Wolverine. But I mentioned earlier, we don't see Angela from FlyQuest, so unless they've been cooking in the time between the end of the stage and the beginning of this tournament, then that could be something that could be exploited by Crazy Racoonn. But what we also have is the incredible high priority of Emma on this map, just due to the amount of control she can have on these points.
Yeah, I think on the point of Angela, when we speak to the EMEA teams quite a lot in interviews, they're like, we need to be adaptable. Like, there's no case of like having a main Vanguard player that just plays like barrier tanks almost, just making sure that you block off, and then flex Vanguards, much like Nevix would be, where you're playing stuff like Hulk, you play Venom, you're playing the Thing, whatever is required and whatever's needed. At this point, there's no excuse not to be flexible. Certainly when you're playing on Strategist and Vanguard, where you don't have as many characters as Duelist players have. You don't know what the meta's going to be, what kind of synergies and interactions these characters have. You need to be able to play everything. That's why these guys are paid the big bucks. Exactly,
they're paid the big bucks to develop either a wide enough hero pool that you can fill in what your team needs, or a strategy where you don't need to. And FlyQuest, they haven't played those, but they're still here. They've still managed to make it, and that could either be just due to the fact that they have the plans, and we've already mentioned the flexibility on their duelist side. This is the team that could have the scariest Namor and Hela combo, because they have some incredible hit scaling capabilities on either players, and one of the best Namors in America. They also have one of the scariest Magnetos, who is also extremely good, so if they decide to go more heavily into the Phoenix, which they also played a lot in the stage, then they have that one-shot combo, while Phoenix did get weakened, and we haven't seen it as much this stage in at least these grand finals. We are certainly still seeing it at least available.
I was quite surprised at like how well read Crazy Racoonn were on the Citadel game earlier. Sort of spotting that Jelly was a bit of a weak map for them. They're able to take us there, even though it wasn't a great map for themselves. They sort of knew that in those fights that end up getting a bit scrappy in EMEA, teams like Na'Vi, Citadel, very good at just in a 4 versus 6 being able to stall the point and keep fighting, much like we saw from Na'Vi up against OUG just before this one. I just don't think the FlyQuest are going to give them that space. If they're playing sort of the Hela Namor, they're not going to want to have like these sloppy, scrappy fights, hoping that you just have the better interactions, the best mechanics in the server. They want to make sure that they draw their line in the sand and go, we're playing from here, do not let them get close to us. I don't know if Crazy Racoonn is going to be as scary as they were up against Citadel earlier today.
And you're echoing the concerns we've heard from a lot of the players. We've been speaking to them, and the general vibe is when we talk about which teams are coming out, FlyQuest is usually in that list. There is a lot of expectations, and therefore we're probably going to see a lot of the teams watching this game in particular to try and get a vibe, to get the first rumblings, especially with how good Crazy Racoonn performed against Citadel. This is where we find out how FlyQuest are looking, the general expectations. We're going to be looking at them for this tournament. Hell's Heaven is our first map, and we are going to be heading in shortly to our draft phase to really find out how we're going to start, how much research have Crazy Racoonn done, will we see a Black Widow ban? It's not exactly the map for it because of the lines of sight, but who knows, maybe it's just that scary.
Maybe for FlyQuest, just those instances. At the very least, like I think Rocket has found a lot more impacts. Like he was always good, certainly when you combine him with Jeff, but now you are seeing something's happening over there. Something has definitely happened in the Virtus Pro versus Dark Zero game. I'm going to assume that Dark Zero have even up the score 1-1, and there is another stream with other games going on in the other group, just so you can sort of flick in between them, set up like a stream together, put them all in. But we're going into this series, the first time that we're going to see FlyQuest so far in this group, going up against the Crazy Racoonn team that played earlier, might have cooled down a little bit, but they're going to be a little bit more warm than FlyQuest that haven't had the chance to go into the server just yet.
Let's get this going. We are heading on in to Hell's Heaven for our first setup. And already the control over the Emma Frost, as Crazy Racoonn will take that out, but that has opened up an opportunity here as we immediately see the Mantis taken out by FlyQuest, meaning that with Mantis being a potential save for FlyQuest in the future, they might be able to get some early control. Jeff protected by Crazy Racoonn. Immediately, of course, we see the Venom removed.
You might be able to one-side it as well if you want to, but they're going to actually protect the Mantis. I think FlyQuest are not the most common team to actually pull out the triple strategist from stage 2. I think Dark Zero has to be ever so slightly, but of course a lot has changed there. You can't assume that the meta is going to be the same as it was at the start of this month, just at the precipice. Certainly for North America, they have less time to prepare for this event in comparison to us Brits and us Europeans that we were done a little bit earlier.
But they have had more time on the patch because they've been able to play at least a little bit on it. Captain America going to be taken away here with trading Captain America and Venom from FlyQuest to remove those from Crazy Racoonn. Whereas Crazy Racoonn, they remove the Atom. So they are more scared of that revive style, of that extra control over a point, which we did see a little bit earlier, than they are of potentially the normal FlyQuest style of actually just taking a 2-0 to a 2-2-2 setup.
Well.
The Loki protection. With the Adam Warlock taken away, they still have the options now for Loki with those extra wide regeneration domains thanks to the Deitific Vitality. They now have set themselves up for extra damage boost and a massive area of effect protection for their team.
So knowing that FlyQuest have been pretty handy with running triple strategists when you're protecting both the Mantis and the Loki, you can run them as a 2-2-2, but you're sort of expected to have something else in there in a way.
Yeah.
For the most part, not always. It's still early days. And I think, yeah, making sure that Loki isn't available on the other side is good because of just the copies. You're able to steal the Mantis ultimate, for example, on the other side, so just make sure that they're not able to.
JMac currently looking at an Angela. Remember, we only put some hesitation into these first rotations here because it's all about what you actually leave the spawn with. If people are hovering Penny and Rocket, there's a chance that at least one of those isn't going through that gateway into the actual map itself. It's been a while since we have seen Penny being played, so expect it not to be an issue. We're heading into map number 1 of this best of 3, FlyQuest versus Crazy Racoonn. Crazy Racoonn looking to try and set themselves to a 1-1 and to really put a scuppering onto the initial engagement, the initial entry into this group for FlyQuest.
There is a gap though, because we saw the Jeff protect from Crazy Racoonn, but they didn't ban it out.
They did not, so there is a potential for Jeff, Mantis.
So yeah, FlyQuest can have Mantis, Loki, and Jeff.
That's exactly that.
Yeah, a little bit scary. You have to sort of deal with all of these characters. JMac sort of filling in on that Vanguard role as the coach, looking to maybe bring in the Angela, but he certainly had some amazing moments on the Strange earlier today. And maybe a bit of PTSD with Crazy Racoonn running into a little bit of Jeff action, pulling people off the map that we saw a little bit earlier from Tanuki, I think.
Vess on their world-famous Magneto coming in here, giving themselves a lovely, hard setup here. And they are running, once again, exactly as you said, Mantis, Loki, and the Jeff for the full setup. Whereas Crazy Racoonn, they are going to be bringing out just the Lunar Adam and the Jeff, which does mean they have the Light of Dark Karma combo from the Adam and the Luna. And we do see some adaptations. Spark Chief has brought out the Angela. They are adjusting their setup.
Yeah, both teams actually trying to play it in the end. You also have energy on the Jean Grey, which we've seen a lot less of in comparison to Stage 2. First pick is actually Vex, knocked off of the map from the Emma Frost, just kicking him down into the dirt, and there's way too much environmental problems to worry about as both Angelas are cleaving into each other. Unfortunately, there's a few more numbers of Crazy Racoonn all stacking up together and fighting, so FlyQuest are going to be sent back towards the spawn room for the time being, as Crazy Racoonn are able to actually take the point first.
They get the first pickup, but a lot of ults are being built up on both sides, and you've got to be afraid of the potential for FlyQuest. Well, I was about to say the potential for that Ensong Inferno into Meteor M, but they have adjusted. They're going for exactly what we predicted they would here. They're going to stick with that double strategist this time of the Mantis and the Loki, which is risky. You're potentially losing a lot of healing output here, especially when it comes to burst outside of Loki, but they are going to roll with that Namor and Hela. Exactly what we were afraid of from them. Great Soul Drainer to try and lock down J-Man for the Silent Seduction in the choke point to try and chase them down. Regeneration Domain is going to buy a little bit of time, but it's taken out because that Silent Seduction does do damage and deletes through those. So many pickups as Lastro goes for the ISGF, grabs Magneto, and is melted.
Yeah, taken out in the end. Galactic Legend is going to be used for Crazy Racoonn, who still have control of the objective. They don't really need to worry too much about FlyQuest now as they are forced back. Eliminations not quite connecting into FlyQuest being stalled out. They're still trying to take this fight, and they're diving in off of the Angela ultimate to tag people down, and then the Horn of Proteus trying to connect onto Crazy Racoonn's backline, but just narrowly missing.
Vital Enviro. That is going to be one useless monstro as this dropped into the lava. Will not find any value here. Energy takes to the sky as they've got a beautiful angle. And just going to try and set them down. Energy drops to the floor due to the targeting, but they still found the first pickup here. And they still haven't flipped this. FlyQuest getting the pickups will finally stop this at 77%.
So Crazy Racoonn going to look to change anything in particular. You're going to actually see Vital moving over towards the Bucky, actually choosing to be on the Hela instead, moving stuff around, and even Lastro's actually going to move over to the Invisible Woman, wanting to feel like they can set up something similar with this more like bunker shooting from distance style. You need to watch out for Vest, though, that does have the Meteor M. The only ultimate right now that FlyQuest are even close to having, and actually Energy gets picked off just as Crazy Racoonn were grouping up.
Here comes the Heaven's Descent down with the Icarus Axis and the follow-up. to try and focus them down with that Tidal Dirge as the mirror sending off the side. Comes out, Meteor to save themselves. Gonna be sent down line, won't find anyone because the Loki teleports away.
Yeah, it gets a connection onto the clone, but that's about it. The shield required to put him onto the ground, and there's a second attempt, at least from J-Mac, to knock him off the map, and he's successful at least here. It's almost in the hands of Crazy Racoonn again, and now FlyQuest are losing too many numbers. Vision switched over towards the Strange to try and go for a stall. Crazy Racoonn, they were very close to taking a round off of Citadel earlier. They're in the lead here.
They're holding this. They're trying to force them all the way back to spawn, prevent a re-engage. And if they can do that, they might be able to hold it. They've got the setup here. NX, the American player for Crazy Racoonn, coming on in. Will finally get taken down by Vest, one of the most aggressive Magnetos in this entire tournament, who is leading the charge for the setup on the overcharge. And the blow-up, JT3 is deleted.
In the invisible boundary, there's not really too much from Crazy Racoonn to actually go and stall this and fight this. You've got to admit that J-Mac is not afraid in the slightest, but he has been isolated now. Vision just getting in behind him, separating him a bit more CC to pull him out of position. As 99% is hit for Crazy Racoonn on progression of this first point. FlyQuest bringing it to just about halfway.
They go for the swap here. Running the Hella without the Namor is so cool to see here. They're just going to try and trade out long distance. A lot of times we would see teams bring out the Psylocke to try and flank, but on this map it's a little bit harder. FlyQuest, they set up defensively on the point as Crazy Racoonn using the walking that was added in a recent patch on keyboard and mouse, allowing them to take the duel, going onto the Loki, but it is avoided, heading to the Goddess of Death with a silent seduction to try and trap them in one angle. They get one blow up. Vision now from behind with the Goddess as Descent, getting the right angle and the Thorns to try and get some quick blow ups and burst as Hela comes down from the side. So does Angela. The Asgardians teaming up together. Energy is going up into the sky themselves, but they are fully going to be targeted here. Goodbye. We have used an Astral Clock to escape though.
It's about to get to 99% for FlyQuest. You have got the God of Mischief being used early, and Zelos isn't close to having the Strategist ultimate. In fact, they get taken out. You're right. J-Mac now in the thick of it yet again, trying to back out, but runs right into the wall as it moves across the objective.
Vital's going to portal them back in. It's the last chance. The substitute coming a main player to try and give them a hold as FlyQuest have brought it back from a huge deficit. Coming on in, Angela going to try and knock them back through the portal to take them off the point, remove that overtime. We're on the last sliver. Star-Lord with the duel. Energy cannot find the target and the pause.
And of course, in these kind of moments, FlyQuest, it feels a little bit like the same sort of vibes of like Crazy Racoonn versus Citadel, where I think the first point was 99% to 99%, and then the second, after Crazy Racoonn lose it, they just kind of get blown out. And that seems to be actually, I don't know if anything else has happened, at least on this stream, that all of the domination maps have been 2-0s. And it's been a similar sort of premise, like very close first map, second map, not too close in comparison.
Yeah, there seemed to, outside of Na'Vi, who had a very strong first game in general, who were able to take their domination. But yeah, Crazy Racoonn, they have had the lead for the entirety of this, but when FlyQuest have got control, they've been able to build up, and they have evened this up, forcing this portal, which means, once again, we don't have Crazy Racoonn on the composition that they're actually happy with, meaning that they are just going to have to take this on the rollout and just hope that portal isn't staying open forever. So once it goes down, it's over. They haven't swapped to stuff like Adam for the Soul Bond to just try and stay through, or the Rocket for the res. They are just trying to keep the same composition, keep their ultimates, and try and win an ultimate fight, because they know they don't have time, they don't have opportunities, because that overtime is already ticking down.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary for Crazy Racoonn, I think, at this point, because that is just a mental hit, and then you've got the pause that just seems to be like, okay, what do we do? Sort of, it's very, takes the wind out of your sails, and I think at this rate, Crazy Racoonn want to start off strong, and I think a first point take on a domination map against FlyQuest that haven't played today so far
would be big.
That could easily build you some momentum and snowball into a 2-0, maybe even a 2-1. You take the first map, FlyQuest are going to be a little bit more poopy scared, I think.
This is interesting, though, because a lot of people, as we mentioned, have a lot of expectations behind FlyQuest, and Crazy Racoonn are taking them to an even first round of our first map. So we're already starting to see that Crazy Racoonn are definitely exceeding a lot of people's expectations and have become a significant threat in an already scary group.
Yeah, it's we sort of knew that this group was going to be tough, but I think what we've seen from the Asian teams, not only from the Asia region, but China as well, even in cases like OUG where they have people standing in, they are really giving it into the stage. And it's early days for Marvel Rivals still. It's like the nascent first year of the game.
First year.
Inaugural Ignite, so there is an element of like not everything's quite worked out, and just going in with the I'm better than you at this thing, and this is where I'm going to find that win condition, when the meta just almost goes against that. Teams don't get much preparation in those interactions. Like a lot of teams have lost against worse teams because the worst teams have played to their strengths, whereas the better teams have played what's meta, what's optimal, and it wasn't in that case.
There is also the nerve situation because both of these teams have not played at an international event. Neither one made it to those mid-season finals. Crazy Racoonn, they were taken out by Gen G, one series away from going to those mid-season finals. FlyQuest were one series away from going to those mid-season finals. Neither one has been in this situation, and while they're not in front of a crowd, they are facing each other. We obviously don't have cameras backstage, so we can't show you in this case, but they are literally facing each other. There's a pretty big distance between them, but it's a perfect situation to try and psych out your opponents if you have that kind of energy in you.
We've seen a lot of players be loud and even just make reputations for just being heels. Like, I think it's the best thing to sort of do, and especially when we get onto the main stage at DreamHack Atlanta, where there's going to be a lot more people watching them. You're going to be out in the open. There's still a lot to show in that case, but you're going to have to wait on that one. It feels like if you can live up to that expectation and just be a showman, that can go such a long way. I mean, Boaster is a great example in other games of just like, teams don't know how to deal when you have that much charisma like on stage, and if you've got some choice words for your opponent, it can really get into their heads in the right moments.
There's also the argument of preparing for tomorrow as well, coming in with the momentum. Crazy Racoonn, 2 almosts isn't going to be ideal. They only have 1 match tomorrow, which will be against 100 Thieves, whereas FlyQuest do have 2 matches tomorrow, as they've only played once today. One against OUG, who currently sit at 0-2 at the bottom of the board, but have made people work for it, and one against Citadel. So they don't exactly have an easy run coming in here. So if either of these teams can come in with a win the previous day in their final match of the day, would be important to make sure they can keep those morale up as we are heading back in this sliver of overtime remaining. And oh my god, Crazy Racoonn are being taken out behind the bins.
Taken out in style for FlyQuest, managing to show up a little bit slow to warm up, but that's sort of expected at this rate. Getting used to the environment, not only because it's your first game, but like you mentioned, first international event. So now FlyQuest have the lead, and it feels a little bit like what we saw from Crazy Racoonn earlier. They had a really good first point on Hell's Heaven, but going up against Citadel, the second point did not go in any way that they would hope. Are they going to make any changes, though, is the question.
Vision is currently on the Star-Lord, so it looks like they may consider abandoning that Namor, especially as they've already got 63% of an ult charge, which is a very quick ultimate to actually charge up and could give them an opportunity, whereas Crazy Racoonn looks like they're going to be abandoning the Angela. This point in particular is, I believe, the Eldritch Monument isn't the best in terms of setting up for environmentals, as the environmental elimination point is a bit further away. However, Angela can get some serious distance on that Assassin's charge.
A lot of the strategies are actually not... There's not a lot of eliminations across the board so far, really. It has just been... Both teams been very frugal with their picks, conservative enough to sort of, okay, we can dedicate these resources in, get the picks that we need, and 6 versus 4 is enough to actually bully people off of the objective. But now I think for Crazy Racoonn, you need to take the point first. They were able to do that over on the first point of Hell's Heaven. You have a Galactic Legend. It's not... FlyQuest don't have anything for it just yet.
They don't really have a counter. The Meteor Realm will absorb at least some of it, but there's not going to be a huge amount. Vision is going to be on that Namor for the rest of this. Next, from above, going to try and just take the duel. Hypermobility, invulnerability frames, and bonus health are the power of Star-Lord, Blaster Barrage. Regeneration Domain will buy some time, but now that's been utilized, they know that they have the opportunity to go on through him. Meteor M will buy at least a little few of those shots, and as such, NX will not find any targets.
There's been nothing other than that pick just before the ultimates were used. The Invisible Boundary was good to break some of the sightlines for FlyQuest, but outside of that, the ultimates now in favor of FlyQuest as we see the Hela and the Angela combining to keep people stacked up into a position as Crazy Racoonn struggle to get some progression onto the point. 2 are taken down in quick succession from Energy, just raining in hell from above. Crazy Racoonn losing the first point, the second point for the first time.
FlyQuest take control. Since they've adapted to this Hela and the Namora, they're starting to take these fights a little bit better. It's exactly what we expected heading into this, just due to how strong these two players are on this, as they're going to try and just hold the line. They've got the choke point, not going to overextend though. While Vest takes a lot of damage, they slowly retreat. They don't just immediately back up, and they don't stay in that choke point to just try and hold it. They know they can take a better fight if they get the better position.
Able to do some damage for the Emma Frost, managing to connect the crystal. You got Namor that's getting very stuck in because the Horn of Proteus is available. The CC able to make sure that NX can't do too much in this fight, and Crazy Racoonn are actually forced to use that invisible boundary, not even on the objective itself, just to keep themselves going. Despite losing a player early on in that fight, NX has to run back as the Star-Lord.
Going to be backing away, and Vital sending in the shots. Vision forced to back away as Vital tries to take the duel. Using that Hela, we saw this throughout Seasons 1 and 0. Hela was such a dominant force because you kind of forced a reaction from another hit scan to try and duel them, or you forced a Psylocke to try and flank it, which is why Vital is bringing it out this time to just try and match energy, but they do not have the Namor to try and take it. They use that Star-Lord to try and find anything on the other side. Vest doesn't land. The Meteor M portal comes out from J-Mac to try and contest. I have Agamotto onto the backline!
But there's not enough damage to actually scare them. I think Cooper might have been able to get the regeneration domain, but he has used God of Mischief as well. Just off the back, keeping everybody going, and now Crazy Racoonn, now that we're getting to 85% progression for FlyQuest, using whatever they have available to them. But there's not enough elimination shown up in the feed. At least J-Mac was able to get one, but the blue of FlyQuest able to combine to get 2 more. There's not enough plays for Crazy Racoonn to keep this fighting, and you've already used a Strange Pole.
They're trying to contest it, regeneration domain for the choke point to zone them off, and while they will get the touch, there's no portal, so all you've really done is delay the inevitable. Lastro's gonna touch by a couple extra seconds, but this is literally just going to be a funnel of 1, 2, and done. FlyQuest showing up after a slightly rocky start. They take a dominant second round.
Yeah, similar to what we saw from Na'Vi a bit earlier and Citadel Gaming when they played up against Crazy Racoonn just before that. Looking at the series as a whole though, Crazy Racoonn were very well read to know that Halls of Jelly wasn't a great map for Citadel, was decent for them but not really anything super standout. Maybe there's a map in particular, either in Convoy or Convergence, that FlyQuest are not comfortable on, that they want to go for a try here. But as you're sort of seeing from like the eliminations, the casualties, there really isn't that many players from FlyQuest going down.
But we do see exactly what we predicted. The most aggressive Magneto in the game, potentially. Vest able to get 10 final hits and one of the highest damage counts in the game behind their duelists. One of the best duelist duos in the game. Energy and Vision, both with 16k damage. Energy, though, seems to have been able to find a lot of those finishing blows with that Hela. Namora does a lot of damage, and it's only going to take one headshot from Hela to wipe you from the board.
And that's when you've got Crazy Racoonn taking a lot of the vanguards off the board, like Emma Frost, Venom and stuff, and Spark Chief pretty much almost exclusively playing on the Angela, which we were saying before of like, is it enough, is it worthwhile enough to fully dedicate to it or just get it comfortable? Spark Chief, I don't really think he broke a sweat there.
Not really, yeah. It's nice to see them adjust, because we did not really see them do that. As we already mentioned, they very much prefer the Venoms, we very much see them prefer the Groot in some situations, but Angela is here, and they utilized it perfectly. It wasn't always about the environmentals, sometimes the Heaven's Descent into those Icarus axes to give you bonus health and sustain you through a fight with some pretty solid actual damage output can be enough. And of course, when you're running in a mod, you look at what are the actual group ups for your opponent, how do you keep them in one spot. If you're not going to run Groot, that Heaven's Descent does do the job. We'll see if they do continue to run in that style, or if we'll start to see some adaptations, potentially Crazy Racoonn starting to get some of those target bans in on potentially that Hela. We'll find that out after this break.
which ones have what it takes to become the best of the best?
The fight is gonna happen right here, right now.
FlyQuest with an impressive opener to that matchup. Crazy Racoonn, who took Citadel all the way to the limit, had a good start, and then everything went downhill really quickly.
Yeah, but there's at least one map for them to run. You know what I said? It was like a decent map for Crazy Racoonn. They're 5-0 on it. Like, I think I'm underselling it a little bit. Like, they also added Citadel Gaming on top of that tally of wins that they were able to get at this event earlier. So the thing is, naturally, it seems fitting that Crazy Racoonn would choose it here, especially when FlyQuest have only played it twice in Stage 2, maybe even just a whole time, even with roster changes. But FlyQuest probably expected that this map would be the choice of Crazy Racoonn if we got to this point.
All of Jalia coming in for Crazy Racoonn. Ironic that they are going for a cat-themed map when they are raccoons. But they're still going to try and give it their absolute best, because like you say, it's a pretty solid map for them, meaning that they have the potential to try and flip this, to show that once again they can hang with the best of the best, as a lot of expectation sits behind FlyQuest. Also, we gotta wonder, this is a fantastic Namora map, especially on that first point. Will we see the adaptation in the Crazy Racoonn bans? For now, we're just starting off with a Mirrored Mantis.
Which is different from before, because we did see that the Emma was banned out first from Crazy Racoonn. Now they do have that first choice to protect, and they actually go for the Captain America.
A little bit of backline dive means they have some pressure, and of course with the Namor losing that Gamma Squid, the Gamma Monstro from the Hulk team up, their backline defense is actually a little bit nerfed when it comes to characters like Captain America and like the Venom. So Crazy Racoonn securing at least one of those for themselves is a little bit scarier. The weird part is why they didn't choose Venom, which is a little bit higher priority. The difference is Venom is anti-heal and is going to be more aggressive, whereas Captain America is a more telegraphed set up for a little bit of extra long drawn out fights, as the Freedom Charge is essentially a third strategist ultimate, or potentially fourth strategist ultimate in its own right.
Yeah, a little bit of a different style for FlyQuest, because they first banned out Mantis last time and then were able to sort of protect it, but instead giving Crazy Racoonn the chance, because it was banned out this time, like, to go for something else. At least they are able to get the Jeff into play, but they had that for free last time. Emma Frost is going to be taken out, so it does seem that Crazy Racoonn sort of similarly trying to go for some of the front lines as well when they banned out the Emma and the Venom.
Giving them a little bit of frontline control. FlyQuest secure the Winter Soldier. Not something we see banned too often, but something on this map that can give you a lot of control over your opponents, especially if they are going to go for stuff like potentially a Groot, potentially a Doctor Strange can get really isolated here, so Winter Soldier can be good. And of course, Reset City is always lovely. Groot going to be banned away. Worst case scenario, your team gets hooked, and then a Groot wall is placed in between the hooked character and the strategist, meaning they don't get any protection, and it's an easy pickup for FlyQuest.
Vanguard focus on the cards for Crazy Racoonn. Very similar, I think, from what they did against Citadel. And Rocket banned out right at the end. You sort of mentioned that the Protect from Bucky was interesting. Crazy Racoonn did ban it, like, finally on Hell's Heaven. So it did feel like just at the end, wanting to make sure that they have some of that damage, because it was missed a little bit. But the Rocket and the Jeff being banned out means that that back line from Crazy Racoonn might start to swell a little bit, I suppose. Especially the fact that FlyQuest were able to ban them out last.
FlyQuest have once again just been given essentially the exact same composition they have. They've got their main Vanguard in the Magneto. This is their preference. They've got one of the best Namoras in the world. They've got one of the best Hellas. And they've just been given the double anchor backline. They have Invisible Woman and Lunar Snow. They don't really need to worry about triple strap, because they've got about as strong of a 2-2-2 as it's possible to get.
And moving away, I guess, from, I think it was Dark Zero, like 83% triple strategist sort of set list. I'd love to shout out the person that actually got the data for that before, because that's hard to grab. You have to watch a lot of odds to see that, but
we do our own research, and it takes a long time.
Yeah, so people doing it for fun it's tricky. I know, it's a crazy one. But for
I just want to talk about what we just saw here just very quickly. Vess was caught by Vital, who sent out a couple mines, but on purpose, so that now you can see that Vess is damaged. This means when the doors open, Zelos or Cooper can heal them up, and already we see Cooper with 3% ult charge.
You're just giving him a little bit more to chew on. It's not going to be threatening damage. Players know better to not get picked off by that kind of play early on. But J-Mac on the Strange going for the port play quite early on, quite a fair distance away from everybody else. Going to switch over away from the Strange to that Captain America that was protected last time. And now FlyQuest needs to be careful where they take this fight. In fact, SparkChief is happy to take it right into the faces of the attackers.
Jump scare Angela coming through the doorway, forcing Vital to reposition. Not going to be enough as they are going to get taken down. SparkChief now looking to continue to harass, to just create any kind of problem. The chase is good, coming down with the Icarus axes to try and duel out that cab, but they're taking a little bit too much damage from behind, forced to back up to the rest of their team.
Really forcing FlyQuest to just be uncomfortable, I think. They're able to adjust to where Crazy Racoonn have set up from, and they're pretty much in the same position that they were in after the Strange Portal, so they're on an island as these players on the attack have been picked off. They have to try and reset and group up together. Meanwhile, FlyQuest are pretty much flipping the spawns as if they're the attackers, holding on and making sure that no progression's really been made from CR so far.
Lucky firing squad on the high ground is creating a little bit of opening. Horn of Proteus, Vital gets a double, J-Mac makes it a triple, and they will repel FlyQuest and allow Crazy Racoonn to start to build up that percentage. Vision does have the portal, but they need to be quick with it.
Yeah,
they let it go, they swap off.
They realized that there just wasn't enough people to go for. Buying decent amount of time, not as much as we saw earlier from Na'Vi. But here, for Crazy Racoonn, able to get things going. FlyQuest, they maneuvered around the map pretty well on that first point, but it felt that they were a little bit sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, had no idea on how they wanted to adjust next, and at that point, Crazy Racoonn have them in an arm lock and able to bully themselves some progression on the point, able to take it quite early on. This is maybe a bit out of position, though, from J-Mac. He has to leap out, and really good peel from SparkChief to just be irritating.
Silent Seduction catching two, trying to get onto those strategists, but the Guardian Barrier is a little bit too much to deal with. Fate of both worlds forcing JT3 to use the mobility from the Carbon Crusher, rotate out and escape.
Fight is weird for Crazy Racoonn. You've lost one of your duelists. Is going to be heading back with NX. Now Energy up on the low ground, trying to maneuver around. The Goddess of Death is going to be forced out, but the Angela right into the face, similar to what we saw from Strangers back in the early days. Means that Vital can't get too much with it, and Crazy Racoonn not fighting in sync from each other. Seems like one at a time they're being taken out, and are they dedicating to this fight? Are they not? They're sort of in and out.
The unholy monster is continuing to just appear on the resets, forcing Crazy Racoonn to back away and just find a new position. They've now gone for the Hela Namor themselves for the first time here. They were bringing out the Hela earlier, but with a Star-Lord. They finally decided that, you know what, this is good. Let's try and see if we can get some resets of our own. Difference is, they don't have that Angela who's isolated people. Instead, they are choosing, once again, more sustain with that Captain America, and they're, of course, bringing out the Loki to get that second Fate of both worlds, as Invisible Woman is not available.
Wow. They're just taking so much damage from FlyQuest, though. When you're trying to sort of mirror these compositions and fight from distance, it really feels that FlyQuest are the only ones doing damage, and also building up a good amount of ultimates in the bank or charge at this pace. It's been a while since I've seen Crazy Racoonn actually get an elimination in the feed at this point. The Emma Frost is going to try and go in and isolate the player, and the invisible boundary is going to be slammed on top from FlyQuest to attempt to try and fight it.
Is giving them a little bit of a setup, and the second that Fate of Both Worlds ends, there's the opportunity for a Horde of Proteus to try and capitalize with the tether from the Heavens Descent, and immediately FlyQuest, they only get two, but it's more than enough, and an isolation onto Xionghoon as well means that this is FlyQuest's map control.
That feels like it's almost like an illegal move from SparkChief, because he's just flying out in front of all of the damage dealers from Crazy Racoonn to try and isolate exactly where the Luna was playing from for Crazy Racoonn. There just wasn't enough damage done, which when you've got Hela and Namor, there's no excuse to not be trying to burn down. SparkChief is moving around, using the shield perfectly, and there's just no response to what these defenders are setting up.
Silent Seduction chasing them down, but they use terrain to back away. Magnetic Curtain not at the ready, meaning Magneto just get pulled in, but there's a Tidal Dirge. No healing for JT3 as the healing reduction comes on in, and Energy is just pinging away from a distance and melting everyone who steps out of spawn.
SparkChief is getting away with absolute murder there, has the cleave option, but is going to leap up into the air and just continue these resets for Crazy Racoonn. Able to take the first point in a pretty decent time. They have not been able to achieve much at all ever since.
They find Lastra, who was attempting to escape while invisible, but was unable to get away. What a setup so far. FlyQuest have locked them at this first corner of point 2. And Crazy Racoonn, look at Vital, he just stepped out of spawn and just ate like 3 shots from Energy. And immediately they have to rotate further closer to that wall, which puts them at more danger of SparkChief, who can just rotate in from above.
It's scary. You've got no real options as well for Crazy Racoonn. They've got the one-sided Groot and Emma, but you can't play them in this kind of setup. It feels that you don't really have much advantage to work with them. So you're trying to match what FlyQuest are putting down. Meteor M just pretty much sent straight into the Goddess of Death to reset it, stop that damage from coming through. Forcing Fate of both worlds, a Horn of Proteus, just as 1 minute is reached on the clock. Crazy Racoonn now starting to string some eliminations together. FlyQuest, do they have enough time to actually go for a reset and make sure that they stall for the second checkpoint?
There's not a lot of time or space left. Vets is onto the Doctor Strange, so they can try and portal in here, but they got to be careful because JMac is trying to just zone them away. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter, portal too late. Crazy Racoonn with the juggling. They burn basically every ultimate for it except for Invisible Boundary, but the fact is, while neutral fights are really important, especially this patch, you can still win just off of ult trades if you time them correctly.
And getting Spark Chief as well, which means that now stuff is starting to snowball a little bit more for Crazy Racoonn. As a reminder, they haven't lost this map for a long time, at least in Ignite, might not even be ever. And this attacking side is where they started to scare Citadel a little bit earlier on, but FlyQuest so far, up until then, not really made too many mistakes. It's only just that portal that seemed a little bit off from them.
Pressure coming in, Force Physics trying to catch them out of position. But it's vital. Once again, Energy is just maximizing the use of that range in the air right now, sieging down from above. Another Heaven's Descent to tether everyone together, catching them more as they try to escape. And all of this is just creating more Monstros, more damage, more resets. And that is FlyQuest with another hold with 1 minute 14 to go.
Look how much space that they've tried to take forward as well. Not really allowing Crazy Racoonn a chance to fight from distance, making sure that all of the angles are covered, and making also sure that now that Fate of Both Worlds was used from Cooper, that you've got a chance to farm these up quite quickly again. Zelos does have an invisible boundary on the horizon, and in fact he's getting a lot of quick ult charge, and NX goes down just at the moment where you feel like Crazy Racoonn are trying to set up. They keep losing players and keep losing out on time.
Soul Drainer comes on in, looking for an opportunity to try and pick someone off on the flank, but unable to find the right angle. Guardian Barrier allowing Vision to play this, and this is the difference. You can see here that Zelos is doing so much work on this Invisible Woman. Those barriers are always in the right spot to protect their backline. Lastro's trying to do the same, but they're getting harassed, pressured by Sparky. Invisible Boundary comes out from Zelos, Silent Seduction. JT3 trying to pull them in, trying to create an opening. Horn of Proteus into the backline, trying to create an opening as Vital ascends to the sky. Meteor M to absorb it, and potentially to pop that Goddess, but no, it's sent to pick off NX.
Pretty much right into the alcove. It didn't see him at all. Now portal play is going to allow FlyQuest to clean up the houses of Crazy Racoonn. There's 5 seconds left on the clock, and there's no players even really alive outside of NX that goes for the Strange right at the end. Not really able to push it all the way to the end of Halls of Jajalia. A decent sort of push in the end, but it did look outside of some blip moments from FlyQuest. It was them in command.
FlyQuest looking extremely strong so far, but like you mentioned, that was not bad. That was not bad of a push at all from Crazy Racoonn, meaning that they have set themselves up to try and go for a heavy defense here, and now that they're bringing out the Namor and the Hela themselves, this could be their opportunity to try and mix it up and turn this round.
You can sort of see from the drafts as well, FlyQuest, they don't have the Groot, they don't have the Emma, they don't have the Venom. So Spark Chief is pretty much forced onto some different stuff, but him and Vess are looking comfortable, and honestly, that Angela looks fire. It's getting away with more than it might do against some other teams, but it's hard to gauge because we need to see exactly what he's going to be able to do. He's only been eliminated twice. For Crazy Racoonn, I mean, what they have the options of having like the Cap and the Emma, mostly for comfort when you have your coach playing. JMac is going to be on the Strange this time as they have to defend against what FlyQuest are throwing down. Sort of expecting that there's going to be a portal play. Might want to do the whole like Looney Tunes, drop them off the map as they attempt it.
There is almost 6k, 5 to 6k difference between the healing output here for these two teams. And that is per healer. Cooper and Zelos are actually playing incredibly well right now, and Seong Hun and Lastro are just getting harassed far too much. FlyQuest looking to start themselves off on a Doctor Strange. Will we see some shenanigans?
Yeah, they also protected Jeff and Bucky. We've not seen him either. Same sort of attempted play.
What?
Trying to take his head off, I think.
Okay, yep, alright, well, nothing happened. We're going to make our way through.
He did try that against Enzo, I think, earlier. Yeah. Dropped him off of the side of the map, but there it was just a little bit too high. And now for FlyQuest, they have some people on the point, and they are forcing Crazy Racoonn to try and contest them here, but they've unfortunately lost NX early in an engagement again.
Spark Chief continuing to just show the adaptations they've had since this finals have started with the Angela Assassin's Charge, isolating the Invisible Woman, forced to try and jump away. Hela comes in to just try and take the dual Vital. giving their best, but another assassin's charge, forcing them down to the low ground, then just not letting them take position. And wow, that's just so fast. FlyQuest already have first point. 5 minutes and 30 to go.
5.5 minutes on the clock. You've also going to make sure that if Crazy Racoonn did get eliminated, that they're not in the old spawn doors from first point. If they are, you're going to make sure that they go down again, especially when you have the ability to chase them down like this. And here you've got JMac that's trying to sort of be a bit more of a distraction, has enough mobility and versatility to get out of these fights if he gets caught out. But Spark Chief, I think, is just in the thick of it so far. He's managed to get healed up a little bit more. He has been an absolute nightmare for Crazy Racoonn to deal with.
Really has, and there's already 58% towards their ultimate, just going to descend in from the bottom, force out the jump, add an Invisible Woman, and job done! You've successfully achieved what you wanted to. You forced a positioning change, you forced an ability usage. That is good! Easy play here right now from Spark Chief, although not so lucky for Vision, who was going to get picked off by Vital.
Oh, the Goddess of Death was available for Vital, but he goes down from Energy. The counterpart on the other side, Invisible Boundary, was also used. Silent Seduction from Crazy Racoonn to try and turn the tide in this fight. Four ultimates for FlyQuest. They're not afraid to get stuck in. They've got this payload progressing relatively well, and there's not much that Crazy Racoonn could throw in. They have ultimates built, but there's a lot of players that have been staggered and continuing to be staggered. They might just need to give up second at a pretty quick time here.
They used every ultimate and got one person, and FlyQuest are still taking the momentum because they were able to force a positioning, once again a positioning move out of Crazy Racoonn. But Crazy Racoonn realizing that they have the ultimate advantage right now. Adronica mid, Tidal Blessings could be coming in for a little bit of extra sustain for that invulnerability on the Namor. Vital is trying to find a flank, but there's a lot of pressure. Vision is just trying to evade, but they cannot evade Vital, who's chasing them all the way back to spawn here. Gonna try and trap them out, try and just capitalize, try and keep this going. Once again, only one person gonna get picked off, but it's enough to force everyone to back up on the side of FlyQuest.
Seems to be just the small picks here or there defining it because of the compositions that both teams are trying to run here. But this, when the composition that Crazy Racoonn are running with the name on Hela, they love this position because you can crossfire, you can set this up nicely. But you can see the Spark Chief is already trying to get ahead of the high ground, stop these engagements happening. JMac is going to try and contest him a little bit more. Able to stop peel back, get some healing, instantly back into this engagement. This is what makes Angela so good. There's no downtime outside of being healed here or there. It's a pit stop for her.
Already pushed all the way into the doorway, forces out the fate of both worlds. That's a big ability to burn so early. Vital trying to flank from behind, comes a Monstro. That's all they were able to deliver into that fight. The ultimate was picked off so quickly. Jung-hoon is down, JMac is down, the sustain is gone. Invisible Woman is trying to give everything they can for it in the last couple seconds, but with NX gone, there is nothing stopping FlyQuest from just finishing off the stragglers and pushing on into the Temple of Bast.
And this is around the area that Crazy Racoonn were able to stall out Citadel earlier on, so we've not seen too much of what Crazy Racoonn want to do in this position. They're going to lock in Vital over on the Bucky, just having a bit more high ground, pulling people out of position. But it feels that Spark Chief is, again, on the perfect character to go and deal with this fight. Tries to catch up JMac on his own, cleaving through these close corridors. He's not too far away from having the ultimate. Heaven's Descent is on the horizon for Spark Chief, and they've even got NX moving over towards the Jean Grey to just add a little bit more pot shot damage.
Phoenix a little bit of extra damage, and of course bursting through that bonus health, forced with the free fly to get away. Meteor to chase down Vital, and they get it. Vet is just so good at that combo. Besieging from above, Energy creating opening, removing the defenders to keep that cart moving towards the finish line. From a defensive position, gets dropped low, chooses to go even further in. JMac gets the pickup, but NX is traded in exchange.
So 3 minutes for FlyQuest to keep this attack going. Just pushing only not really that far, to be honest, especially when you have players like JMac going down. This is a really hard position for Crazy Racoonn to try and hold for just before this like 90-degree angle. And there's so much focus going in onto key targets. Crazy Racoonn need to try and grab things together. They've got a Silent Seduction, and they're actually going to use it quite early on. You can see that this player is still coming in from spawn, aren't quite ready. That feels very early coming in from JT3.
But it did create an opening. They had to step up onto the point to try and create enough space. Heaven's Descent from above traps everyone in the doorway. 1, 2, 3, chasing down the strategist to try and make it a FlyQuest 2-0. And that was a beautiful trap out, a shutout, and a controlling win for FlyQuest.
Really good showing, your debut on LAN in an international stage. A little bit shaky, a bit slow to adapt in Hell's Heaven right on that first point, but ever since then, it's pretty much been in their total control. Outside of maybe some like pole plays here or there, but like all other teams make them. Pretty much expected when you've seen teams like Citadel stream sort of sweat a little bit more against the likes of Crazy Racoonn, especially on maps like this. Handed them their first map loss here for the first, for a long time for Crazy Racoonn.
Looking at the scores here once again, we keep talking about it. Vess is basically a duelist, while still protecting 35k damage blocks, was keeping up with everyone except for JT3, who was able to top that out, while still getting 19k damage, which is the second highest in the game, give or take, only behind Energy. But Energy, though, we've got to talk about it, 40-4, with 16 of those being final hits. We're back in Hella meta, and Energy is loving it.
A lot of these players from Fly